my question to you is, we are in the 21st century. Do we have the philosophy of 21st century farming? We have the tools, but do we have the methods? We have the technology, but do we have the harvest? What you see on your plate, is it worthy of being called as food? And this is where I'm going to take you through. I am Dr. Prashant Rajput. I'm a nephrologist and a transplant physician. And by my heart, I'm also a regenerative farmer. To plug you into my story of regeneration, I started a clinic in my hometown just to serve my homeland. And this was in 2014, where we could see that there was an epidemic of chronic kidney disease of unknown cause. And these patients essentially were farmers from the region. The only common factor what we could see in them was they were all exposed to a significant amount of agrochemicals. By the background, I lost my father in 2017, and this was the time when I was introduced to agriculture. We were into conventional agriculture. We were growing bananas, we had sugarcane, we had cotton, we had millets, we had pulses and turmeric. That was my primary harvest. We had good yields, but the conventional agriculture was not sustainable. By 2019, I was very sure that the chronic kidney disease was related to the agrochemical use in agriculture. And I was not the only one who could confirm this. There were several epidemiological studies from other parts of the world which concluded that definitely this is leading to the CKDU. We started reading and researching about regenerative ag. And consciously, I converted all my conventional agriculture into the regenerative farming. This was the time where I also learned the syntropic agroforestry, which was introduced by Ernst Koch in Brazil. I mastered the Korean natural farming, and apart from our own Vedic ways of agroecology. And in the process, I named my farm Aaranya, which means a forest. So what is regenerative farming, and why it is an idea whose time has come? Regenerative farming is a traditional indigenous way of producing food. It is in synchrony with nature, and it takes care of the processes which are natural. This by using microbes which are in nature. This not only rebuilds, it restores, it revitalizes, and it regenerates degraded ecosystems. It also has an ecological impact. It mitigates climate change. And by fixing the atmospheric carbon into the soil through photosynthesis, and also regulates the water cycle. Lastly, what it does is it helps in producing nutrient-dense food. What are these regenerative farming practices and how they are different from the conventional agriculture or the organic farming? Regenerative farming is it's a bunch of practices. The most common practice is no-till farming. When you reduce the tilling of the land, what it does is it builds up the soil structure. It reduces the soil erosion, and also what it does is it helps in keeping your intricate fungal network under the soil intact. And what does this fungal network do? It produces antibiotics. These fungal networks, fungi, are the sources of most of our antibiotics. They produce immunomodulators. They also help in producing certain chemicals, which is now of concern or now of more interest to researchers, which is called ergothioneine, which is the longevity vitamin, which is produced by the fungi. And when their soil is not tilled, they are directly taken up by plants, and that comes to the food. It also has an ecological impact. When you reduce the tillage, what is happening is you're not letting the carbon out into the atmosphere, and you put the carbon into the soil. And that helps in preserving the climate crisis of today. The second important is the soil armor. When you cover the soil, it helps in retaining moisture in the soil. And once your moisture is retained, what happens is you reduce the water which is going to the plant. The next most important thing is when you are doing this, you're suppressing the weeds. You're also regulating the soil temperature. What you see today, the soil temperature is, or the atmospheric temperature is increased. That is because of solarization. And when you cover the soil, you reduce the soil temperature. The major impact is it also stabilizes and it makes a home for the soil food web. And this, once the soil food web starts functioning, it produces lot of nutrients in the soil which are directly taken up by the plants. The most important amongst this is your earthworm population rises. So when we conventionally farmed, we had an earthworm population of 1 per square feet. And in 4 years, now we are about 25 per square feet. The third most important practice is the cover crops. When you have a cover on the ground, that is a living root. It converts the atmospheric carbon into sugars, and these sugars are put into the soil by the plants to feed the microbes. What the microbes do is they will extract the geochemical breakdown, or they will cause the geochemical breakdown of rocks, producing nutrients for the plants, and this is taken up by the plant. When you terminate these cover crops, it starts decomposing by the same sets of microbes which are in the soil. And these decomposed plants, it starts a cycle of birth, followed by growth, followed by death and decay. And this cycle produces the fertile topsoil. And that's the only way by which you produce the fertile topsoil. The fourth is use of compost. Traditional organic farming is a bacterial dominant system. We started producing compost which is fungal dominant, and that is the elixir of life. We started brewing the fungi. We had specific fungi which could produce immunomodulators that could reduce inflammation, and it could sustain a lot of other human functions. The fourth is the water cycle. The water cycle is the most important. When you have a living root, it slows down the flow of water. It leads to infiltration of water. There is a spread of water. And this water, when it's retained in the system, in the soil system, are taken up by plants. And that is the fundamental by which you form clouds. When you have the cycle of cloud formation to evapotranspiration, that leads to what we call as a proper pattern of rainfall. And this is extremely important, especially when you're mitigating one of the most important part of the climate change, and that is through water vapor. This is regenerative farming. Regenerative farming has triad of advantages. It improves soil health by improving the microbiome of the soil. It improves your plant health by changing the phylobiome, and it improves human health by changing the gut microbiome. And what you're seeing today is when you change your gut microbiome, it comes through the epigenetic signatures of the food which it is farmed, that is the regenerative farmed food. It can have a significant effect on the gut microbiome. So when you farm food with the conventional farming, what it happens is you are letting certain microbes, especially bacteria, to colonize, and these are pathogens. The proteins which this bacteria produce, they diffuse into the bloodstream, and you have an inflammatory response. What you're seeing today is a 4-decade of inflammation, and that's why we have a host of diseases which has come from that. We have seen a significant rise in neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinsonism and dementia in elderly. This is directly linked to Helicobacter pylori. We have an epidemic of autism in children. It has increased 5,000 folds in the last 30 years. We have an epidemic of fatty liver disease. We have an epidemic of chronic kidney disease. Rheumatoid arthritis is directly linked to Proteus in the gut. And there are cancers, mainly breast cancer is linked to the pathogens which produces sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone, and also lymphomas. So what this regenerative farming can do? Definitely when you farm regeneratively, it produces nutrient-dense food. It has been shown that when you are farming with regenerative techniques, a recent study has shown almost 14 to 34% increase in the nutrients in the food. Regenerative farming is not a new fad. It's an ancient way of farming. What I want you to take home today is that food is the most important form of healthcare. There is nothing like food. Food is medicine. We need to have a paradigm shift from just merely treating chronic diseases with medicines. We need to put a focus on how we can prevent them by food. The most important is together we can have the future. We need to farm with ecology which is sensitive. We need to farm to make the ecosystem thrive. We need to produce food the way it was supposed to be produced by nature, with the light, the sunlight, the carbon dioxide, the water, and the healthy soil. And this is the way by which the food is produced in nature. The most important is you need to know your farmer. It is very, very important as you know your family doctor. You need to know the beginnings of how the food is farmed, and you need to trace that. And we need to regenerate health by regenerating the soil with the living healthy roots. Thank you very much.